Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week, really fascinating conversation. I am interviewing Zoe Stephens. Now, she is a traveler. We've talked to a lot of travelers before, but her distinction is that she travels to North Korea. She is from the United Kingdom, originally from Liverpool. I think she lives in London now, but she began several years ago being kind of a tour guide in North Korea, helping those who lead the tours acclimate everyone to the differences that North Korea is. Really fascinating conversation. I think you'll enjoy this one. North Korea is a place that we know very, very little about, so it's just fascinating kind of hearing a little bit more about it. The point of this conversation was to learn about a place that's pretty closed off to the outside world, maybe some misconceptions that we have, and learning kind of what the real North Korea is. Zoe, obviously, I have to point out, has an interest in being positive about the situation, given that she works for a company who does tours there. And like she says in the conversation, she wants to continue working there. So we have to kind of take that when we are speaking with her. I learned so much. I think you will too. Of course, goes without saying, anytime I interview anyone that's at all controversial, that, the point of this podcast is to talk to people with an interesting story to tell. Certainly an interesting one when it comes to dealing with North Korea. That doesn't mean, this podcast is agreeing with anything or nothing that she said. It's just a matter of speaking with her and getting her opinion. I don't give mine. I challenged her a few times, but I don't want this to be looked at as, approval or disapproval of anything she's saying. It's all just about getting you some information. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. I learned a ton. I've said that several times, but I really, really enjoyed myself. So here is Zoe Stephens. I'm here today with Zoe Stephens. Zoe, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. Well, before we kind of get into, your travels and some of the interesting places you've been, just introduce yourself if you would.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Zoe. I'm from the UK, from Liverpool. And I'm currently based in London, and I've been traveling for the past few years, previously based in Beijing and traveling a lot in and out of North Korea.
Yeah, and that's obviously why we're going to talk, because that's not necessarily a place that a lot of people have a lot of experience traveling. Even the most well-versed travelers maybe haven't checked that off their list. So tell us, I guess, what started your passion for travel, in the beginning?
Really good question. I actually didn't travel much as a young child. We were always kind of traveling throughout the UK, never abroad. And then I first went abroad with a couple of friends in high school. And then basically just kind of started going abroad every year from then. And it took me a long time to realize that not everyone likes to travel as much as I do. So I kind of was traveling thinking oh, okay, everyone wants to do this and everyone, is traveling as much as me. And then I kind of realized, oh, okay, maybe my friends don't want to come on holiday with me and stuff like that. So it was really kind of natural for me to be kind of traveling and stuff. And I think that the main thing that I enjoy from it is the exploration aspect. Apart from the kind of adrenaline rush of going to new places and doing new things, it's also about learning about new cultures and languages. And the language aspect, I suppose, is probably the thing that really hit it off for me, because my background is in learning languages and I did that at university. And I think the combination of learning about languages and new cultures and stuff like that, it just really got me excited about travel.
I mean, that's an interesting thing to kind of talk about too, because I'm a big traveler too. I've talked to a lot of travelers on here,
And, we've actually talked about the language aspect. You're kind of in a different spot with it where, that's something that interests you. But that's a lot of times I have kind of a barrier, a roadblock to people. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't speak the language. I feel like I'm not going to do well. And a lot of times you have a funny way of still being able to get by, even when you don't speak the same language, of still being able to enjoy yourself. And that shouldn't be something that holds people back.
Definitely. I think so. It's something that shouldn't hold you back. However, I will always try and learn at least a little bit of the language in the country. So definitely it shouldn't hold you back from traveling and from going to really random places, even if they speak absolutely zero English or your native language. However, I think it's important to kind of learn at least, hello and thank you, those kind of words. And if I spend a long time in a country, then I really like to immerse myself in the language as much as possible, because I really believe that in order to understand a culture, as much as I like to understand cultures and different people, different groups of people, then language is fundamental to that.
And I think that's normally very much appreciated anywhere you go. Even if you butcher it, if you try just a little bit, people like that you're trying. So I mean, that kind of leads into a good first question about your trips to North Korea. I want to ask you here in a minute about what made you decide to I guess take the plunge and go somewhere very different. But let's stick with languages for a second, because I have heard that given that North Korea is, I guess, a little bit more I don't know if I want to say isolated, but they're a little bit more off the mainstream. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that when it comes to written Korean and spoken, that it's a little bit different than, South Korea, because it's kind of stayed, I don't know, like Korean 1940s, so to speak.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I think it's very fair to describe Korea as North Korea as a very isolated country. And it's very interesting to see how that is reflected in the language. As you said, there are some differences. And one of the big differences is the English influence that you see in South Korean that you definitely don't see in North Korean. You see North Korean words, they will usually tend to use words. If a word is derived of foreign origin, then it will tend to be derived from Russian or Chinese instead of South Korean, which may have a foreign origin word from English or something like that. In the writing as well, not so much affected by the language change over the years and the English influence, but in the writing system in North Korean and South Korean, it's different. So the spelling basically is different. So you do have a few differences like that. Generally, I mean, it's completely mutually people can understand each other from North and South. And in the North as well, if anyone ever watches South Korean dramas, as North Koreans, then they do have to be careful not to pick up South Korean slang that others may also pick up on.
I gotcha. Yeah. And we talk a little bit about that isolation. That obviously makes it a little bit more difficult to get by maybe on your native tongue. How many people did you find knew English? Because as much as I don't like it, when I travel, I can normally get by just because I know English, and a lot of tourism does kind of work in the English language. I don't know that that's probably the case there. So how easy was it to find English speakers?
Not many English speakers. In terms of local people, there are very few English speakers. You'll find more of them in Pyongyang, maybe, students, people studying at university. There is a chance that you'll pass by someone on the street and they can speak English. But generally, if they're going to speak a foreign language, it's more likely to be Chinese or Russian. And they're more kind of relevant to North Korea. But those who work in the industry, in the tourism industry or in hospitality, often have really, really great English. So the English from the North Korean tour guides, their English is just absolutely incredible, especially considering that they've often never spent time abroad studying and really using that foreign language in the context.
We were talking so much about North Korea. What made you, I guess, decide to make that somewhere that you're going to go? Obviously, that's not, for the Western world, that's not normally a typical vacation spot. So what made you decide to take the plunge?
Well, I'll try and keep this short, but it's a kind of cool story, because basically I was living in Japan at the time. And I was doing that for a year abroad when I was studying at university for Japanese. And during that time, it was like 2015, 2016, Europe was going through refugee crisis. And we were in the UK, it was on high terror alert. And basically, all the Japanese people that I would meet, they'd be like, oh, okay, cool. You're from the UK. Amazing. I'd love to go, but it's too dangerous right now. And it was really strange hearing people talk about my own country like a war zone, like it was too dangerous to visit. And I realized that a lot of this opinion was based on what was being said in the media. And so I wanted to kind of challenge my own preconceptions of a country that, I was really portrayed in the media as something. And I actually knew nothing about North Korea, like most people, I only knew what was being told to me in the media. And so I wanted to challenge that. And, I kind of Googled it. Can you visit North Korea? And turns out you can. And so I basically went from there. I booked a tour and first went to North Korea. And when I got there, I kind of realized, okay, yep, it is a bit different to what the media says. And that then inspired me to carry on working there and to carry on going there and to show people, to show people kind of what I saw there as well.
Yeah, no, that's interesting for sure. Obviously, it wasn't like you were sitting in your hometown, never really traveling. So your family was kind of used to you probably being out and about. But what did they think when you first were like, I'm gonna take a tour to North Korea?
Yeah, so that's very correct. My family do definitely know that they can't really stop me from doing anything, and I do go to some random places. My dad thought it was super cool, and he still does. He was supposed to come to North Korea with me in April 2020, but unfortunately the borders closed. My mum, on the other hand, had a bit of a different opinion, and she was like crying on the phone saying that I shouldn't go and stuff like this. And to be honest, I said to her, okay, if you have such a strong opinion on it, then, Google it for, 5-10 minutes, make up your own mind and then come back to me. And, she just said, I don't want to even type those words into Google. And so I was like, well, if you're not going to be open-minded, then, I'm just going to have to just going to go. And then that's that.
Yeah, well, that's a very strong opinion. Then that's not just a little bit of being hesitant. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
So I guess what you decided to do it. You went on a tour. What was your initial first impression? Then also, even I understand probably excitement just of a new place and somewhere that a lot of places people don't go. But I mean, was it at all kind of, I guess, nerve-wracking to go somewhere like this? Because I do think there's a lot of unknowns, and that's always kind of a scary thing for people when they don't exactly know what they're getting into.
Definitely. And, it was nerve-wracking. And when I remember a lot of the feelings that I felt the first time I went there. So when I take in tourists now for every tour, I can really empathize with how they're feeling, and I know what's going through their head. Like, I remember the first time, I saw a North Korean and I was like, oh my God, like, are these North Koreans? Like, wow. And, they were in China because you go from China into North Korea. And I was like, oh my gosh, how are the North Koreans in China? Can I look at them? Can I touch them? Can I speak to them? But, and you're really nervous crossing the border, and you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to look through my stuff? Have I accidentally brought in something? I had a couple of things from Japan, and then I remembered, oh my gosh, North Korea and Japan, not really good friends. So there's a lot going through my mind. And I actually, up until the minute I was on North Korean soil, I was like, I don't think it's going to happen. There's something that's going to go wrong. And so it was nerve-wracking. And then when I got there, the thing that I felt that I continue to tell people in 2 words, how I describe North Korea, even now, is that it's pleasantly underwhelming. And I mean that because, you go there and we have all these preconceptions, like military parades, crazy brainwashed people, rockets, stuff like this. And then you get there and you're like, okay, there are people walking around, doing their shopping, going to the market, going to work, playing in the park. And you just realize, oh, okay, they are normal people going about their normal daily lives. And that really left an impression on me.
So, I mean, you just kind of mentioned a lot of misconceptions that are out there. Speak on some of them rather than try to give you some, I guess, conceptions that a lot of people have, perceptions that a lot of people have. Give us some misperceptions.
It's really difficult. I mean, I think the main one is that the main one for me is that it's not super crazy all the time, and that everything's not everything is fake and set up for other people. This is probably the biggest, misconception that people have, is that everything is done just for tourists. And it's something that at first I could understand. I was like, okay, I can understand why you might think that. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I just can't get my head around why people can still think it, because when you go onto the Pyongyang metro, for example, and there's hundreds of people around you going to work, commuting, doing whatever they're doing, or when you're driving through the countryside, when you are at a theater. And to be honest, if people say to me, oh yeah, but it's all a show, it's all just, for us tourists, my reply to them is, I'm sorry, but you're not that important. Like, and without wanting to cause offense, it's not in their mindset, it's not in their agenda to create this fake entire country just for some random tourists that come in every so often. So that's a big misconception. I think also the rules about when you go there as well. People tend to think it's going to be a lot more strict than it really is. So, anything from taking photos to drinking alcohol, people are really surprised often that you're allowed to drink alcohol in North Korea. And I don't even know where that comes from. It's probably just because there are lots of rules about it and it's very strict that people automatically think, oh, okay, what's one thing that you can add rules to it? Drinking alcohol. Maybe you can't do that. So, of course, you can drink alcohol. The guides, they love drinking alcohol. I always recommend, buy your guides a beer at the end of the day and have a chat with them. That's the best way to learn anything about North Korea, in my opinion, is to find out about the North Korean people and their lives. You can take pictures, you can take videos. There are rules that you have to follow. But in general, it's a lot more free than people think. Of course, you do have to walk around with guides, but that also doesn't mean that you have to be glued to them. If you're walking around in the street or whatever, you can, of course, like stop and take a look at into a shop window, take a picture of something. It's a lot more free like that. You just can't push the rules too much. And also a really big misconception is that the guides are government minders. And it's just quite frustrating when a lot of vloggers and stuff who visit North Korea do refer to them as government minders, because you can describe them as people working for the government, because in North Korea, everything is owned by the government, and therefore technically everyone in some shape or form is working for the government. However, these are fully trained tour guides who study very hard to get to where they are. They go to the tourism college or foreign language university, and they study for however many years, and then they become a trainee guide, and then they train. They're incredibly knowledgeable, and they work for a travel company, which in turn is owned by the government. But they work for a travel company and they're tour guides. They're not government minders.
I'll throw out one misconception potentially. But before that, I guess in order to kind of throw it out there, I want to ask, what is the, perception of North Korea in the UK? Because obviously it may be very different than here in the United States. And that kind of leads into that perception. So what do you think it's any different, or is it kind of the whole Western world has the same kind of thoughts?
I would say it's pretty similar. Yeah, okay. Pretty similar.
So, obviously here, in the United States, we're all about, being free to do darn near anything you want to do, and just that big freedom. Everyone has freedom on their, that's the first thing everyone shouts all the time. And, that's the big thing that people maybe don't like about what they hear of North Korea, is that people aren't very free to do what they want. And there's a lot of, kind of government thumb on everything that people do. So is that really the case? Obviously the videos we see is, a picture of, the leader of the country in every house, and people just being almost like passionately devoted to that. And just I feel like in what we see every day, people remember exactly where they are and, you know, who they answer to. And that's not the case here in the United States.
Definitely. And I think when you talk about freedom in North Korea, I mean, it's an inherently difficult topic because, like you said, you know, and in comparison to the US, you know, there's actually very little freedom. But I will always kind of try and say that things are never black and white. And so whilst North Korea, you know, a lot of things are controlled. And as you said, you know, they are very devoted to the leaders, and this is it's very serious for them. It's not a thing to joke around about. They're very serious about their devotion to the leaders. But not everything is black and white in terms of, for example, a lot of people will say to me, like, you know, are they allowed to choose where they live, where they work, what school they go to, you know, and these things, for example, they do have a choice. You know, most people are surprised that, you know, they're actually allowed to choose what they're studying or what work they go into or where they're living. And it's not as free as, you know, we have it in the West or in the US. For example, if when you're getting allocated a house, so everyone in North Korea is allocated their house, right? But it's not as if the government you know, just point to a house and say, hey, you guys have got to live there, see you later. People will kind of apply to a house by saying, okay, we're a family of 3, we work over here, my wife works over here, it would be great because, you know, my grandma lives here, maybe we could live close to her, kind of thing. So you do get that kind of gray scale of things where it's not all completely super controlled, but it's not at the same kind of freedom that you would have in the US by far.
So yeah, and that kind of reminded me, you're talking about how people aren't just completely placed. That reminds me of another kind of thing I saw in a documentary about those freedoms, that I remember seeing like a piece of paper with like 6 different haircuts and people could only get
Right.
those. Is that the case?
Exactly. So no, it's not. And the way that I described this one, so this is a really famous example. These haircuts that, you know, they go, you know, they're everywhere in the salons. You go into any salon and they have like 10 or 12 different haircut pictures. And we have that. It's funny because we have that in the UK and in the US too. If you think about it, when you go into a hair salon, what are the pictures on the wall everywhere? They're basically different styles. So the Koreans can like show, because they don't have, and they do now have like smartphones and stuff like that. They wouldn't have traditionally. So they can't just like Google things and be like, I want to look like this person. So, you know, it's convenient for them to look at a hairstyle and point and be like, I want something like this. That's basically it. But they're allowed to choose their own haircut. Of course, there is a certain standard that you should adhere to. So, you know, especially if you're in Pyongyang or if you're, you know, in the workspace and stuff like that, just like we have uniforms and, you know, when you're in school, you have to have your hair a certain length or whatever, at least in the UK where we have uniforms.
I can't completely discount it. Obviously, that's a little bit more regimented than it would be here in the United States or probably in the UK, because there isn't necessarily a standard. Yeah, you have to wear your hair a certain way while you're in school, but once you're out of there, you just throw it down. And that's not necessarily probably the case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously North Korea does get a bad rap, and there's a lot of places that's the case. But a lot of times what you can point to is the people in a lot of places are good. Doesn't matter what the government is anywhere. A lot of times you can find a lot of good in the people. So talk about the North Korean people.
Yeah, I mean, this is my absolute favorite thing about doing the job. And that's pretty much the reason why I do it, is to kind of try and attempt to rehumanize the North Korean issue, because we forget a lot of the time that, hey, these people that a lot of us are making fun of on a daily basis, they're real people just trying to live your lives like you and me. So the Korean culture, the Korean people in North and South Korea are still very similar. You know, it's not been a terribly long time since two countries were separated. So you see a lot of similarities between the two cultures, definitely. And I mean, obviously, my contact with North Koreans, it's not completely free. And of course, my Korean is not good enough even to be able to, you know, have deep conversations with people on the street. But they're generally incredibly welcoming people. Very similar to Korean and kind of East Asian culture. You're coming into their country, so you're a guest. They want the best for you. And ultimately, they are just, apart from the Korean culture aspect of it, they are just like you and me, like they love to have a drink or get drunk of an evening. They'll make jokes, they'll talk about sex, they'll say inappropriate things, and they just want to joke around. They're super curious about where you're from. They want to hear about your country, what kind of the politics of your country or what's going on in your country. They're very interested in curious people, and incredibly smart as well.
So, I mean, what does that conversation look like? You said they want to know about the politics of your country. Do they want to know that just because it seems kind of interesting and different? Do they look at it as maybe that they're more kind of oppressed than where you come from? Or what does that, I mean, what does that conversation look like? Are they, I mean, I feel like they would have to outwardly, feel grateful for where they're at. But.
So I think it generally depends on the person. Overall, North Koreans are incredibly proud people, and they are proud ethnically to be Korean. They are also proud nationally to be North Korean, although they don't call themselves North Korean because they refer to themselves as Korean, and they don't recognize the divide between North and South. So they're very proud to be Korean people, and they're very proud of their government that, they will maintain is the best and provides for them, and that a lot of them really do, have a lot of trust in and faith in. However, there are some that are probably more curious about what's going on in the outside world. Everyone is curious. Others may, be a bit more apprehensive and interested. Others may just kind of, want to talk politics because they want to show off about how great their country is. And a lot of the times, a lot of the stuff that you'll tell them about your country, they'll be like, oh, okay, my country's a lot better. I'm quite happy about my country, Yeah.
I gotcha. I mean, this is not, my first interview. And this is the reason I asked you about the people first, because that's what everyone wants to kind of bring up, which would kind of ruin the next question. That is, tell me some of your favorite things about North Korea. And obviously we've removed the people from being able to be talked about now.
Yeah, very, very smart of you. To be honest, my favorite thing about being a tour guide in North Korea is kind of showing people around and, being able to show people this other side to North Korea, not necessarily a different side, but just like additional to what they may have heard about in the media. Being in North Korea and about North Korean culture and the people, I think one really amazing thing that I just love is the landscapes. To be honest, the Korean peninsula is like 70% mountainous, and it has got such amazing coastlines with absolutely beautiful mountain hikes and stuff like this that you really don't ever hear about in the media. And you have these whole beaches and beautiful hiking areas all to yourself. Of course, there's sometimes like local North Korean tourists there, but apart from that, you're not seeing any other tourists, and that's really amazing. Of course, it's really interesting, whether you agree with it or not, it's really interesting to learn about a different political system whilst you're there. And I love challenging myself and learning. Every time I go there, I learn something new that, is not necessarily black and white. And it makes me question, question a lot and want to explore a lot more topics and stuff. So
yeah, and that kind of, I'll tell you kind of a perception that maybe I have, and I think that a lot of people have, and you can let me know, I guess, how true it would be, because you talked about, the countryside outside the capital. I guess the perception there is that, the capital is a lot more heavily monitored, and the people that live there probably have to deal with a lot more of that being monitored. Outside of there, people, they don't care as much because it's not in that capital city. And then also that, outside of the main city. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about things being staged outside of the main city, the capital. Most of North Korea is kind of a very poor country.
Definitely. Pyongyang is its own little bubble and not representative of North Korea as a whole. I think a lot of capital cities like that are like that around the world. So in terms of freedoms and how much you're monitored, it kind of goes both ways, whether you're talking about the tourists or the North Koreans themselves. So I think in Pyongyang, the North Koreans themselves are monitored a lot more because it's the government capital. It's a very important place in North Korea. So there's a lot more monitoring in Pyongyang. However, for the tourists, it's a lot more free because the Pyongyang people are used to seeing foreign tourists a lot. There's very few places in Pyongyang that you're not really allowed to go to. You can visit many places, cafes, bars, and bowling alleys, blah blah blah. However, in the countryside and the least visited places in North Korea, the tourists are more restricted. However, the North Koreans generally have more, freedom and stuff like that. So you do have to be a little bit more careful as a tourist, especially to really least visited places like in the Northeast, where, the local people aren't used to seeing foreign tourists at all. So they might they'll be shy around you. They won't really know how to act. If you try and talk to them, they'll probably try and walk away. So it's a lot more strict up there, but you can visit a lot of places other than just Pyongyang, which is a big misconception.
Yeah. So we talked about you being a tour guide. How did that happen? There's a lot different than deciding to go on a 2-week long tour and actually, I assume you kind of you live there. And how did you become a guide of there? Because I feel like that, just in the perceptions that we have, that would be something I would think wouldn't be allowed. They're so, the perception is they want everything to be so, I guess scripted and guided, that they would want a North Korean be guiding people, not somebody shows up in North Korea and it's somebody from England telling them about the country.
Definitely. And so basically what my job is more of a go-between. So we work basically with the North Korean tour guides. So it's not just me going into North Korea and being like, hey guys, let's have fun in Pyongyang. I basically work as a mediator, like a kind of cultural mediator between two vastly different cultures, but also a mediator kind of just making sure that everyone is safe beforehand. Everyone knows what's going on beforehand and in the country as well, just kind of helping out the guides. But I don't do much, to the left-hand side is the Juche Tower. We leave that down to the Koreans themselves because, like I said before, they're incredibly knowledgeable. And how this happened, basically, after my first tour, I returned back to the UK. I finished my degree. I saw that the company that I originally went with were hiring. So I started working for them. And then in the end, I changed company and now I work for Koryo Tours, who are the people who basically founded North Korea tourism. They're pretty much as old as me, 27, 28 years. And now working for them. And it is very different going there once and then going there 20, 30 times. But I will say the job kind of gets easier and harder as you go. The tour guiding and, getting everyone's visas ready, getting everyone's train tickets ready gets easier. Dealing with the North Koreans gets a little bit more difficult. I think the more you know about them, the more you try and work with them, the more you learn, and you just get into a big, deep hole of more things that you want to know. And that gets quite difficult.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of confused by that. You said the longer you work with them, the harder it is to deal with the North Koreans. I don't know what that means.
So, not to deal with them. So they're excellent people to work with. I think what I mean by that is the more you spend time there, the more you learn. And I think always, and then it kind of opens this hole of more things that you want to know and more things that you're inspired to kind of find out more about. And then, of course, you start to build relationships with them as well. So you start to get friends with them. So spending more time with them, you get closer. And then, of course, you don't have any way to contact with them when you're out of North Korea. So I should have said before as well, I didn't live in North Korea. I lived in Beijing, which is pretty much the gateway to North Korea. You travel from China to North Korea is usually how you get there. And so every time I return back to Beijing, I wouldn't be able to talk to them. And so that's difficult as well when you're building up relations with people and then suddenly, you don't know how they're doing, or you want to ask how their new baby's doing, stuff like this. And of course, since the pandemic, I haven't seen or heard anything from them for 2 years now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess to challenge you a little bit, I feel like with what you said, a lot of people would be listening and hear that I guess the more experience you've had, the more that curtain's been pulled back a little bit, where of course what they want people to see makes it a little bit more enjoyable. That first time was more enjoyable, but now that you've been there a bunch of times, you said it's a little bit more difficult. So it seems like the curtain's pulled back, and maybe it's a little bit maybe more of a tarnished place, or tarnished reputation. Maybe is what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the Koreans keep their hearts very close to their chest, so they don't go into too much detail about stuff. And I think of course, when tourists go there originally, they want people to have they want to show the best of their country, which I think is how you want to show any country when you go to any country, right? It's what tour guides will show you. I think more what I mean is, the more you kind of are working with the Koreans, the more you have to be able to. You have to learn how their culture is and how they talk with each other and how things are done in the country. So, for example, a lot of things get, in North Korea, it's very normal for the itinerary to change all the time, for, you to suddenly be told that things are cancelled, and you have no reason. They don't give you a reason. And then you, of course, have to relay this to the tourists, and then the tourists get angry that an itinerary item is cancelled. So trying to deal with things like that and knowing how exactly to handle it with the Koreans, sometimes things can happen, but they just don't want to go through the motions of trying to make it happen. So it's difficult trying to kind of get around dealing with that aspect. I think is more what I meant with working. The more you work with them, the more you kind of are trying to learn these ropes.
I gotcha. Before we started, obviously, we wanted to make sure that it's as fair as possible and not, bashing anything. And that's not what we're here to do. I want to learn as much as I can. The only question I have, I guess, with that, and I'm going to allow you to kind of say as much as you want, is, in being fair on both sides and why the reputation is what it is. Tell us maybe some things about Korea or North Korea that maybe there's an opportunity for improvement. Maybe we'll leave it there rather than negatives. Opportunity for improvement.
Oh, that's a good open question. Opportunity for improvement. I mean, so obviously, then this is also something North Korea wants, is to get more onto the global stage and the foreign stage. And they'd happily be doing more trades, and they'd happily be sending more of their people outside of the country to go and study in foreign universities or go work. Something stopping that is, obviously sanctions and stuff like that have a real impact on that. So I think that would really benefit the country, is, opening out a little bit more, at least economically, if not anything else. And I mean, the thing that the North Korean people want the most is reunification. And I mean, I was very naive at the time. I just presumed, when I first went there, I just presumed that North Korea, they're the ones that would never want reunification, and they're the aggressors, and they're the ones that, are continuing this divide. However, I've actually found it to be the opposite, that the North Korean people, that's all they talk about, that's all they want. And in fact, in South Korea, it's very much more anti reunification. than not. However, North Korea are not doing themselves much good in terms of testing new rockets and stuff like that. It's probably not so reunification friendly to keep up the nuclear weapons and stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. We can move on from that, but I mean, I guess I have to kind of point out, that half of the answer for growth in North Korea was sanctions that other countries have put on. So that's not necessarily something North Korea can change. So
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that we didn't talk as much about things that North Korea could do to improve.
North Korea could do to improve. I want to give you an answer for this one.
Yeah, while you're thinking, I mean, obviously, the big thing that anyone knows about is the nuclear weapons program. That's what we all know about, and that's frankly, I mean, I understand maybe why they do that, because I mean, if that wasn't the case, that wasn't something that they did. I mean, in being real, it's a very small, poor country that we probably wouldn't have on our radar at all. We wouldn't necessarily care what they're doing. So that's, I mean, I understand why they do that, but that's also kind of their downfall too.
Definitely. And I mean, that's, I mentioned that, it's not so reunification friendly with the nuclear weapons and stuff. And I think they were definitely going down the right route. I think it was back in 2018 when they said that they weren't going to, do any more nuclear weapons. And they announced to the population, yeah, we've built all of our weapons. That's it. We're not doing any more. I was definitely going down the right route, especially if they're looking to get more down the road of reunification or international friendly, or at least friendlier than they currently are. However, and you're quite right in saying that, there is reasons why they still have nuclear weapons. So, and it's because of the threat, in my opinion, North Korea will never start a nuclear war. That's not what they're after. They'll never start anything. That's not what they're after with these nuclear weapons. They have this really strong, I mean, if you're talking about improvements to North Korea, maybe I can use this as one, but they have this really strong feeling of imminent threat that they cannot get rid of. And this is, propagated by the government as well. It's, this is why we need nuclear weapons, because we have imminent threat from the foreign powers, from the US. And they can't let it go. And I think that's probably, something that would definitely be an improvement, is less aggression against these foreign powers, and to let go of the past, and to know that, the rest of the world has kind of moved on.
I like that. And I guess kind of to throw in something you said earlier about foreign tourists thinking that they're being watched all the time. I feel like maybe North Korea has that same kind of perception of the world. And I would kind of throw back exactly what you joked, that you're probably not that important. People really don't care.
Definitely. Yeah. It's a very paranoid country. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So traveling to somewhere that's, I guess has so much stigma and so much unknown, but then learning what you have, what has that done for you as far as just your own, I would say your own personal growth, but also what's it taught you about, the world as a whole?
It's the biggest lesson that I've learned, that I will always hold now, is to question everything, especially with the media. I mean, I sound like someone really paranoid, but I'm not. I'm very interested in how the media can affect public opinion. And indeed, I'm doing, I'm looking to do PhD studies on this. So I'm very interested in it, but I'm just interested in questioning everything, not necessarily about the media, but, people's culture, their lives, and going in with an open mind. That's the number one important thing when anyone visits North Korea, or any country indeed that's, or any culture that's very different from your own. Go in with an open mind, and don't presume that just because someone does something differently, it's inherently wrong.
So, I mean, obviously we're talking not, I probably would have never found you if you didn't kind of make yourself known in the social media world talking about North Korea. So tell us just a little bit about your your social media journey? What made you decide, hey, I want to kind of amplify my journey into North Korea, let people know a little bit more about it? And what made you decide to start that platform? And then tell us a little bit about it.
So I'm really glad you kind of mentioned it, because the social media stuff, it definitely has been a journey. It's a good way to describe it. So when I first started working in North Korea, I actually hated social media, but I was put on marketing. So in the company that I worked for. So, I kind of got onto the social media radar. And then basically I decided to start, promoting tours to North Korea and in a way promoting North Korea, basically because I truly believe that tourism to North Korea has a positive impact on North Korean society, and also a positive impact on us as visitors going into the country. And so whilst some may say that it's ethically questionable what I do, I make videos in North Korea, I show this different side. I will never show, I'll never show the side that the media show. So, generally I'll never show the negative side. And that's basically because, one, fundamentally, I still want to go back to North Korea. Two, I feel that, people tell me that what I do is unethical. And I would say right back to them, well, is it ethical to go and take videos and take pictures in the slums in India or something like this? Like what is ethical? And three, I just basically want to show this different side, because it's underrepresented. It's not in the media. And a lot of people will come at me and tell me, like, why don't you show this other side? Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about that? And my simple response is, that's not what this platform is here for. You can find that anywhere else. I am here to show this different side because it's not shown anywhere else.
No, I gotcha. Yeah. The ethical part of that is not what we're here for at all. It's to kind of learn a little bit about you and about North Korea, but talk a little bit about how you've dealt with some of that pushback, because I'm sure that you've kind of mentioned it now, but how have you dealt with that?
So to be honest, it is difficult, because most of the feedback that I get, generally how feedback works in general is that, those who are not happy with what you do will give the feedback. Those that like what you do will not say anything and happily just sit by in the background. So I get a lot of negative feedback, and it's a lot easier. It was a lot easier previously when I was going into the country frequently and I was around my colleagues who, would support me a lot more. But at the end of the day, I know what I'm doing, and I am very confident that what I'm doing is for the right reasons. And I've made a video, I talk for like half an hour about the ethics of working in North Korea, the ethics of traveling to North Korea, because it's a really hot topic. And, at the end of the day, I will always come back to the fact that, tourism to North Korea does more good than harm. Of course, a lot of people come at me with funding the regime, the fact that I'm a communist, the fact that I'm, stupid, naive, turning a blind eye to the other stuff. But at the end of the day, people who say that kind of stuff anyway are the ones who, they form their own opinion. That's fine. The ones who have an open mind and who are willing to listen and see what I'm doing, and the ones that are willing to then travel to North Korea and kind of build their own opinion, that's then who I'll listen to. If you go to North Korea and you still have the opinion afterwards that, I'm someone crazy doing crazy stuff, then whatever, that's fine. I'll respect your opinion. But when you've never been to North Korea and you only have the perception that I did before I first went to North Korea, I can't take you seriously.
Right. I understand. I kind of want to mention, I guess, the two things, I guess, before I forget. The one thing, obviously, I feel like letting people see a new culture, and then also the people in North Korea kind of seeing a different culture too, is always beneficial. Learning about each other is never a bad thing. So I do feel like that's the case. But you can't discount, what you said earlier, which is that you have to make sure that you stay positive and not negative because you want to go back. You can't discount that, because that's the reality. And that's part of why the stigma is there, because it is kind of guarded. Yep. Also, I kind of want to, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe correct something that maybe was a you maybe misspoke. At least part of it you did, because you said the fact that you're stupid, which I don't think is the case. I don't think that's it at all. But then you also said, which is one that maybe you're going to say or not, but you said the fact that you're stupid and the fact that you're a communist. So I don't know whether those two are accurate or not. I don't think you're stupid.
I suppose I was trying to say misconceptions of me. So definitely wouldn't say that I'm stupid. And I definitely would not call myself a communist. And whatever I am, I remain fully apolitical. So that's one of the things on my channel is that, I have there's great political conversations that go on. I just stay out of them. I
think that's it. That's kind of the name of the game on this podcast too. Not in a huff, because I'm not going to get upset about much, but I know we wanted to stay apolitical, and I wanted to make sure we stayed apolitical on both sides, and I didn't want you to have misspoke. But so let's I guess kind of wrap things up just a little bit. Tell us how people can find your social media, learn a little bit more about it, and then quickly I try to find something that people would, because you said that you're showing the positives, but I don't necessarily think that's all you're doing. I don't think it is propaganda by any means. So tell us how they can find it. And then I wanted to kind of give people a little bit of a taste on what they would find. So how they can find it. And then also a recent little 30-second video you did. Tell us, I guess, the 6 things that you can't bring to North Korea.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. And it's at Zoe Discovers or at Zoe Discovers NK on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube under Zoe Discovers, and on my YouTube you can find like longer videos, more vlog style videos of basically anything from tasting coffee in a really fancy coffee shop in North Korea to going on drives or walks throughout the countryside, to also quick Q&A sessions that I do like 5 minutes long, basically telling you if you can bring your phone into North Korea, what you can and can't bring into North Korea. And my Instagram is a kind of shortened version of that, obviously a lot more pictures and, reels and stuff like that. And the most recent one I did of that is the 6 things that you definitely can't bring into North Korea. So as an example, if I can remember those 6 things, usually I reel them off when I'm taking people on tour. But the first one is Bibles. Then there's definitely things in the Korean language, nothing to do with North Korea. Then you've got GPS devices, pornography is banned, and hey, I can't remember the 6th one. So I guess if you wanna find out the 6th one, you're gonna have to go to my YouTube or Instagram channel. But also if you wanna know anything about North Korea tourism, then do check out Koryo Tours. Because they're the company I work for. They're the kind of leading in North Korea tourism, and you can find any information on their website.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, I guess, in wrapping things up, what you hope the future holds. I did notice that I think recently you kind of were expanding away from the Instagram to just focus solely on North Korea. So I assume the future holds some traveling to other places too. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so recently I divided. So I have 2 Instagrams actually. One is Zoe Discovers, one is Zoe Discovers NK. So I want to basically build up a travel one and the North Korea one. And I want to keep the North Korea one. I build up quite an audience, and they're basically only interested in North Korea. So I want to just keep it to North Korea. But I do travel a lot, and I'm creative. I like to show people what I'm doing. So that other one I'll be using for travels. And I mean, in terms of the future for North Korea tourism, I hope that it would be amazing if it opened this year. I remain hopeful. Well, I remain hopeful that it will be opened in the next few years, hopefully next year. But I do hope that it opens soon. It's got a very, very strict COVID policy. It was the first to close back in January 2020. I was actually one of the last people to go there. And I hope the North Korea tourism, can be back on the cards, and that more people can go there. And of course, when the US travel ban is lifted, it would be great to have a lot more people from the US, see North Korea for themselves.
Yeah. And I also kind of want to connect another dot. Obviously, you work for a company who gives tours of North Korea, but it could be years. It's been 2 years. It could be years until that's possible. So, I mean, what else is happening? What else you got going on? Because hopefully that's not it.
Yeah, right. So actually during the first year of COVID, I studied a master's, did it all online because I was stuck in Tonga. That's an entirely different story. But I did that all online. I did that in international communications. And now I'm actually back in the UK doing another master's in international relations. I hope to then take that to PhD level pretty much at the end of this year. Hopefully go back to Asia, looking at East Asia, maybe Taiwan, China. Let's kind of see where I end up. But that's what's keeping me busy at the moment. And obviously working at the same time, I'm actually really kind of boringly working as an au pair. I don't know if you have those in the US. It's basically like a live-in nanny. So I live with the family that I work for. And I do work with Choreo Tours, still doing social media, marketing, stuff like that. We have a few international tours that US citizens can also go on. So do make sure to check out that. Going to, unusual destinations, Turkmenistan, stuff like this. And apart from that, the social media stuff, I'm really trying to build up the channel because when I go back to North Korea, to be honest, like I know it's going to be big, I'm looking at making like big, proper professional vlogs and documentaries in there. So it's going to be big when I can get back.
Absolutely. Well, stay tuned for that for sure. Give us those connection points again.
You got at Zoe Discovers NK for North Korea stuff on Instagram, or at Zoe Discovers for all my other travel stuff. Zoe Discovers on YouTube, and do check out the website Choreo Tours for that's choreogroup.com for international tours as well as North Korea tours as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I've definitely learned a lot, so I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lovely speaking to you.
So that was Zoe Stephens. Learned so much from her, just about a place that very few of us know that much about. I think that we took a good look at North Korea as a whole, kind of their challenges and issues, and also some of the positives. Like I said, the people are positive everywhere, no matter what the government is or is not. I didn't really focus on that part. I wanted just to give her a chance to talk about what she wanted to talk about. I'm sure we can find a million and one things wrong with every country, and North Korea is certainly one of those who has a lot of issues as well. But I didn't think that trying to bring any of that up beyond what I did was necessary. I really appreciated Zoe speaking with me. I think. I know that if you don't know too much about North Korea, you're probably surprised by some of this, but that was the goal in our conversation. So if you are interested in more from Zoe, go check her out at Zoe Discovers or Zoe Discovers NK. That links will be in the show notes. Of course, go check us out on Instagram as well, Not Enough Podcast. Go give us 5 stars on Apple and on Spotify. Appreciate that. Appreciate if you leave a written review on Apple too. But until next time, I'll see you, and sure to be other great guests coming up. So check us out next time, and take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think, or hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.